Hello everyone, welcome to Thriving with Fry, where I teach and discuss advanced mathematics, finances, and self-improvement. I'm finally approaching the end of the school year, probably about a month and a half left, and I have been asked the same questions all year. How do I study? How do I get straight A's? How do I memorize all the formulas? How do I pass these tests? Same questions. And I honestly was waiting to answer until I approached the end of the school year because I wanted to be sure that my study methods were efficient. Now, I have failed some tests this year, maybe about 2 or 3, but throughout the school year, I was testing and experimenting with many different study methods and comparing them with my test scores. And with the tests that I did do bad on, I was able to relate them to certain habits that I possessed. So it is safe to say that through trial and error, I learned what does and doesn't work when you are studying or trying to pass a class. The study methods that I use are not original. They have been known and used for years. However, I have took popular study methods and kind of manipulated them and used them to my own benefit. The main issue a lot of people have with studying is the time that it takes, or that they do not know how to study. And I have narrowed down the way I study down to 3 simple steps. It doesn't take weeks to do before a test. You're not up all night studying. It's not stressful at all. It is very, very, very simple, very easy. And in my opinion, I feel it is up to 85% more efficient than the way people study when they're up all night, not hanging out with friends, not going out, just studying every day. There are a lot of situations in life where less is more, and studying is definitely one that I believe falls into that category. I have had units where I was studying like for 3 hours every day, and although my test score was good during those units, I truly do not believe it was from the amount of time I was studying. I believe it was how I was studying, and I tested that theory during the past couple of weeks, and it is true. It was not how much I was studying, it was what I was doing. So that is the purpose of this video, to explain how to study for straight A's in a very simple way. Straight A's is not some high pedestal thing that you have to climb 50,000 stairs to get. It's very easy. It's just about what you are doing and how you are doing it, not how much you are doing. Now, although the study method that I molded is very efficient for me, you have to remember that everybody is different. There are many different types of learning styles, and the way that people receive and process information is completely different from one person to the next. And so before I get into my study method, I want to talk a little bit about the brain and how the brain processes information so that you can understand your learning style, and then you can mold my study method into your own study method. When you learn how the brain receives and processes information and you understand how yours does so specifically, then you can use that to your advantage to learn anything you want, remember anything you want, and that helps for tests and even just for life. Most of the lobes of your brain are separated into 2 categories. You have the primary cortex and you have the primary association cortex. Your primary cortex basically receives stimuli, so stuff that you see, smell, hear, feel, that is what your primary cortex is receiving in. But when you are processing that stimuli and you are making a connection about what it means, how it feels, that is your association cortex in play. This is such a powerful thing to know, because no matter what the stimuli is that you're receiving, your association cortex will integrate this information to perform higher cognitive abilities. So no matter what you see, feel, hear, or taste, your association cortex can be manipulated. It can be used to your advantage. Another important function of the association cortex is that it stores this information into memory. So what you perceive, or your stimuli from your primary cortex, is going to your association cortex to process it, and then it is being stored to memory. The brain has many different association cortices. You have the motor association cortex, you have the somatosensory, it's so hard to say that word, the somatosensory association cortex, you have the auditory association cortex. If you can follow the pattern, is all your different senses have an association cortex. So just to summarize that information, it goes from your stimuli to your processing to your memory, or your primary cortex, association cortex, to your memory. Obviously, it is more complex than this, but that is a simple way that I like to put it. This is such an important thing to know about the brain because this means that you can connect your stimuli to your memory. If you're not familiar with Pavlov's theory of classical conditioning, I would definitely look into that. Basically, if you can connect an original stimuli or sense to another one, you can create a stronger synapse between two neurons, thus associating the first stimuli with the second stimuli, which in other terms, increasing your memory or association of the first one to the second one. Basically, the summary of all that information is that the brain works in association. I started off with that because, like I said, we are all different. The way that your brain might perceive something is completely different than the way my brain might perceive it. However, that does not change the truthfulness of that original stimuli. The way that I look at it is that there's one starting point with different pathways to the same ending point. So now that we have covered that, now I can get into how I study for straight A's. I want you to remember what we started off with because certain things that I might associate such and such with, you don't have to associate it with that same thing. Associate it with what makes sense to you or what your brain initially does. Okay, so the absolute first thing I do, I don't even do this, it's just the first thing that I think before everything, is to separate your semester, your unit, your year by weeks. You don't want to overload your brain with information. I view each class as a week-long period of information, so I just want you to view or narrow down your semester or your unit or your school year into weeks, not into days, not into a full school year, a full semester. You just have weeks, that's it. So with that being said, my study method is a week-long method. I only study once a week for each class. I do not study every day. I do not study all night. I only study once a week, and now I will show you how. So the first thing I recommend when it comes to studying is to jot down notes during lectures. And I use the word jot and not take notes because I'm talking about bullet points. If they give you a paper, little stars in the side of the paper. You don't have to write every single thing they say. You really want to grasp the information. I honestly found that I was less effective when I was writing everything they said, writing everything we did together. I just jotted down small things that I wanted to remember. A lot of people recommend not taking any notes and just looking at the professor or the teacher and letting them talk. Yeah, I don't know. I wouldn't do that. Class time should be 75-25. 25 notes, 75 looking at the professor, letting them talk. But you should definitely be writing something. There was a study that showed that writing does increase memorization. So although you're not writing everything they say, writing down some stuff will help 100%. So for one subject, I have 2 or 3 classes a week. And so each class, I just jot down notes. I keep it on one paper because I'm not writing everything they say. That whole week is just a jot of notes from the class. The second thing I do during this span of a week is I find practice papers or practice problems. Whether your professor or teacher provides you with them or you have to look online, you want to find practice problems that also have the answer key to them. I do these practice problems without any notes, without any help, just to see what my brain naturally does, and I write all the answers that I have and then I check the answers. The point of this is you want to see what mistakes you naturally make. So those mistakes that you will make on the practice problems are the same mistakes that you could make on the test. So when you're looking at the answer key and you see the right answer, and if you got the wrong answer, jot down the right answer and write why you got it wrong. What did you do to get it wrong? Did you forget to do a step? Which step was it? Did you do the algebra wrong? What exactly did you do to get the answer wrong? After you do the practice problems, you should have a page of small jotted notes of what you did wrong, why, what steps you missed, all of that stuff. The more mathy the class is, the more practice problems you do, because the more mathier a class is, the more studying requires less learning and more repetition, which I will make another video about that because different classes require different types of studying and you're going to have to learn that if you want to be successful in all of your classes. So after steps 1 and 2, you should basically have a page of notes, jotted down notes, and a page of practice problems with your errors explained. Now number 3, which is really where the studying happens. Like I said, I study once a week. I do step number 3 on Sunday or Saturday, and if my weekend is pretty busy, then I'll do it on Friday night. But really you want to do it after you've had your week full of classes. This process takes about 30 minutes to an hour. So what you're going to do is get a scratch piece of paper and you're going to blurt all of the things that you have learned throughout that week. I mean, whatever comes to your head, any problems you've done, any steps you've taken, just everything. Just put everything out onto that page, a whole messy summary of the week. This is called the blurting method. It is the first thing I do because you just want to spill out all the things that your brain does remember. This is important because when you see how much your brain already knows, you are less intimidated by how much you have to add on to it, how much you have to remember now. If your brain already grasped and remembered 3/4 of the unit, you only have to worry about 1/4 of it, which decreases your study time, decreases your stress, and it also improves the efficiency of what you're learning. A lot of people overstudy because they are studying stuff that they already know. They're getting the answers right, they're doing it right, they're remembering the information, and that's great, but you are not giving what you don't remember enough attention. If you already have one glass full, don't keep pouring into it. Pour into the other glasses that are not full yet. So after I finish my blurt sheet, I look at it and I compare it with my notes and my practice problem notes or error reviews. I look to see if anything from my practice problems or anything from my notes are missing on the blurting page. After I do that, I put it all to the side, and now it is time for my favorite thing to do ever. It helps me pass every time. I pull out a page from my notebook and I go to a blank page. This step is really where it all comes down to. It seems overly simple, but is not too good to be true. It is good, it's small, it's short, it doesn't take any time at all, and it is so effective. I go to my blank page and I write the week that we're on, week 1, week 2, week 3, or the unit 1, unit 2, unit 3, and I put the title next to that. So for example, week 3, derivatives, or unit 5, integration, whatever you went over. After that, I put the purpose of the unit or the purpose of the week. I'm not saying some sentimental purpose like how does this contribute to life, but how did what we learn contribute to what we're going to need on the test? Because remember, all the units are basically adding up to one test that you're going to study for. So what piece of this week fits into the overall picture of the test? You probably won't have to put that down, but I choose to put the purpose because the more advanced classes that you take, the more that they become accumulative, which means that it's not a new unit and you just can scratch everything from before. They all add up to each other. One unit's from the unit before and they all just connect somehow. So I like to see how they all connect. What is the reason that we are learning this now, and how is this going to connect from the last unit to this unit down here? It's all a bubble, so I like to know the purpose of this one. After that, you're going to add the how-to or the steps. Basically, how do you solve this specific problem or equation? You want to add the first step, the second step, the third step. And in all of those steps, you're going to have stuff that you look for in the previous step that's going to contribute to the next step. So you just want to be very detailed with the steps because that's ultimately what you're going to follow each and every time. The next section you are going to have is things to remember. Earlier I said that with your practice problems, you're going to jot down the errors that you made on your paper, why you made them, what you forgot, and all the stuff like that. This comes in handy for this step because you want to put your error notes into the things to remember. You want to highlight the errors that you made in your practice problems in the things to remember because your brain didn't initially remember that step or that process, and so that's what you want to put emphasis on to remember. This section is all based on mistakes, stuff that you overlooked, stuff that's very important, and if you miss it, the whole problem will be wrong. That's what this section is for. And lastly, on this paper, you want to add a practice problem. I suggest adding one of the hardest practice problems you have ever seen with this subject. I feel like the harder the problems that you practice, the easier the test will be. Overall, for any class, I recommend studying using the hardest examples you can find and learning how to do those online with YouTube videos, and the test will seem like a piece of cake. A lot of people study with notes given to them through class. They study with simple stuff they can find online, but when you dig deep and find those hard ones, the test will feel like a first grader test because you already went up here. So that is really all I do to study. I narrowed it down to those 3 because I was doing way too much in the beginning of the school year. I would stay up all night reviewing notes, and they were always like notes compacted with just random words from the teacher. I had no clue what they meant, where they came from, and I never really processed the information, which is why the day before the test I panicked. I didn't really feel like I knew it. I felt like I was just shoving stuff into my head. You do not need to shove information into your head. You don't need to be on 100 all the time. You can just relax. It is your brain. You can control your brain. You can manipulate your brain. It's yours. You can do all of that. Like I said in my last video, nothing is hard if you learn it. Nothing is difficult to grasp if you learn it. Stop accepting loads of papers from your teacher and accepting it as help. Is not help. It's too much information to put into your head at all times. What the brain needs is simplicity. Narrow it down. Know what you are struggling with the most and focus on that. If you have the rest covered, you don't have to touch on it until the end of the week when you are doing your review. Piling up college tours can become very expensive with little to no time to explore all of the colleges you might be interested in attending. If you're a high school student and you are starting to consider colleges that you might want to go to, then CampusReel gives you the opportunity to do virtual tours through student-generated video content. These students give you real-life insight into a variety of universities. They talk about the campus life, the food, the city, the students, and just everything you will need to know when considering what colleges you want to go to. You also get the opportunity to win a $2,000 scholarship just for viewing one virtual tour. So if you are interested, please scan the QR code, or you can click the link either in my bio or description and sign up. It's free of charge to sign up. So why not just get this free information on the inside life of the universities you are considering going to. My overall study schedule looks like the whole week I'm just in the class jotting down my notes. I keep it in a little folder, and by Sunday I'm doing a review. I'm covered for that week. I don't have to think about it anymore. It goes into my notebook. Now we're on week 2. I'm doing the whole thing again. Review on Sunday, goes into my folder. Not thinking about it anymore. By the time the test comes, usually around like week 5, the midpoint, I only have 5 papers to review or study, and then maybe like 10 practice papers that I will do. That is it. It takes me an hour and a half at most. You know yourself, and you have the opportunity to teach yourself. Yes, you have a professor and a teacher, and they will give you the information, but you can integrate it into your mind any way that you see fit. Overstudying can be ineffective. There is many studies that says when you overstudy or you study too much, especially the night before a test, it does nothing for you. It actually might make your test scores worse. The goal with studying is to understand the information, not to memorize it. The process of understanding something versus just memorizing it is 10 times more easier, quicker, effective, and long-lasting. You are more likely to remember something that you understand up to 10 to 20 years later than you are to remember something that you force yourself to memorize for a test. And you probably won't even remember it for that test. Stop overworking your brain. Stop overworking your energy. It doesn't take all that to get all A's. It really doesn't. These people at high institutions are telling you that they study for 20 hours a week. You can do that, but you're burning yourself out for something that you can get either way. Here is an example of one of my weeks of reviews. So as you can see, I had the steps, the important things to remember, and then I had an example at the end. I didn't write the purpose for this because I really didn't care at that moment, but you know, I knew it already. Obviously, every class is different. This method works for me with most of my classes. A lot of my classes do require so much memorization, such as anatomy, which goes into a different type of studying. But the purpose of this study method was so that you can pass your tests that just require you to understand the information, mostly math, chemistry, physics, English, all that stuff. You don't need to overstudy for those classes that people say that you have to overstudy for. The whole purpose of this study method was to divide your information load. You don't need to remember 5 weeks of information. You only need to remember 5 pages of information. You don't need to study every day of the week. You only need to study one day of the week for what you learned that whole week. I will make more videos about more complex ways to study for more harder tests or harder classes because, yes, the older you get, you might have to do more effort into studying. But if you are surface level, just trying to pass your classes, trying to get all A's, this is ultimately the way that I do it. I am not doing anything extra right now. I haven't been doing anything extra for the past like 3 months. I've just been doing this, and I have been getting 100%. Probably the lowest grade I have gotten so far has been an 83. People have came up to me for help. I've tutored people, and this information is still fresh in my head. I still understand it. I don't feel like I overworked myself to learn it. It just flows so easily inside my brain because I divided the information into weeks, and that is the most helpful information I would give someone studying right now. One last small thing that helped was getting a small notebook instead of a long, big, regular notebook. I have like thousands of just small notebooks, like mini notebooks that I put all of this work in that I was talking about. I feel like the length or the size of these notebooks reiterates in my brain that is not that much information. Like I can fit a whole week of information onto that page because they're just talking at you, but it's like 5 or 6 things you need to remember. And so when I say you're just learning 5 pages of information, I mean 5 pages of information, not 5 pages of information. A bigger notebook encourages you to write 10 times more than you have to, which is way more information that you have to ingest that you don't need to. A small notebook forces you to only write what is important. That is it. And so when I have these small notebooks, I'm not overwriting everything that these teachers say because not everything that they say matters. It really doesn't. I only write what's important, what I need to know. What do I need to know for this specific subject? What's going to make me successful in understanding the subject? So get yourself a small notebook for these classes. You don't need all that paper. You don't need all that space. This is 1 week all in here. That's it. So I hope y'all enjoyed this video about the study method that I have been using to help me be successful and get straight A's. I don't see myself stopping this study method for a long time. It has not failed me yet. It's easy, it takes no time, and it releases a whole bunch of stress off of me. I have time to go out. I'm not really ever worried about tests or grades because I know that I've been keeping up with it since the unit started. I've been keeping up every week. I don't need to jam 5 weeks of studying into 1 week. Getting straight A's is not about how much you do, it's about how you do it and the quality of it. So as long as you are doing quality reviews at the end of each week, just once, you should be stress-free, fine, and prepared for any test that comes. I hope everyone has a great Sunday. Remember that over here, we only go up, we do not go down. So continue to progress in everything that you do. And I will see you all next week. Bye.